Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, Alexander Volkanovski regains his UFC featherweight strap. Legend. Paddy the Baddie is for real, folks. The Scouser took out the D1 All-American. And John Silva submits Bryce Mitchell via ninja choke. Fighting nerds stay undefeated. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con. And look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. Farah Hanoun checks in all the way from the other side of the planet, does our preview shows at MMA Junkie. Great job on Saturday, Farah, and every Saturday before the pay-per-views. I catch him all the time. Danny Segura, he was at the event, so he's back in Miami. Said it took him a long time to get there and a long time to get home. Hopefully he gets some sleep after SBC today. And we'll also have a special panelist, special co-host panelist today, Eric Nicksick, one of the top coaches in MMA. He'll be joining us in a bit. Now, on the ones and twos, we got a dynamic duo, Cold Coffee and Goes. They are behind the scenes making us look good. All right, let's get started. UFC 314. 314 is in the books. Let's talk about it. Let's start at the top. Alexander Volkanovski is a champion again as he stopped a streaking Diego Lopez down in Miami, the 305. Danny Segura, you were there. I can't think of a better person to lead things off, react to this historical recapturing of the title.
Yeah, it was unreal. It was crazy. It was crazy to witness because I was one of the people that thought that Volkanovski was going to lose. I thought he was going to get knocked out by Diego Lopez, and I kind of was left waiting for that moment the entirety of the fight. And Volkanovski looked great, and this is just a guy that I think is historic at this point. We'll get into it, but I'll put it out right now. I think he's the greatest of all time at 145 pounds. And I think that performance did it for me. Watching him compete at that high level at 36 years of age after two stoppage defeats, I mean, it was just incredible. It was just incredible. And I do think that, like, he's the very best at 145 pounds right now. And I think he's going to hold on to that belt at least two more fights. And I think, yeah, just a fantastic talent. And I was in awe in watching him perform at this stage of his career, still holding on to his prime. What a win for Alexander Volkanovski. What a moment for him.
Danny, just to be clear, you're saying he's the greatest featherweight of all time or the greatest featherweight champion of all time? Because we've dissected this conversation.
Greatest featherweight of all time.
Greatest featherweight of all time. All right.
He passed Aldo.
Farah, what was your reaction? I was seeing some of the notes. I know it's hard for you to stay up through all this, but it was a deep card. I know you've watched the fight again, but what were your thoughts on Volk's performance?
Yeah, I picked him. I picked him to win, but I was a little bit hesitant because the narrative going into the fight was, where's Volkanovski at mentally, right? That was the question. He was coming off of back-to-back knockout losses. He took that long layoff, and I think a lot of people looked at the fight of one of two ways. Either Diego is going to catch him early or Volk is going to win a decision. Volk won a decision, but I wouldn't say the fight played out exactly the way I would have imagined it to. But what I did like about Volkanovski was his confidence. It was there right from the beginning. And I felt like Diego probably should have pressured them a lot more earlier, not allow him to build that confidence. And I thought Diego was a little tentative in the beginning. Although I have to admit, when I watched the fight live, I know I say this probably every single show I do here on MMA Junkie, it's very exhausting for me because it's about like 7:30 a.m. when I watch the fights and I'm spent by that time. So I always like to go back and rewatch it. So when I watched it the first time around, I had Volk winning. I'm not even talking about the outcome, but Diego Lopez did a lot better than I thought he did because I watched the fight live. I was very tired. And then you read everything that people say on social media, the narratives and whatnot. People made it seem like it was like complete domination. While Volk did look amazing, I thought Lopez had his moments as well. And I was impressed with Lopez having that power throughout the fight. I just think the mistake that he made was that he didn't go right at Volkanovski from the start, because what gave Lopez success throughout his UFC career, at least, was that aggression right off the bat, like a bat out of hell. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think it might have played in his head the fact that this was a 5-round fight and he needs to pace himself. And I think that was a mistake because Volkanovski naturally was going to be a little bit tentative because of those knockout losses. But Lopez gave him a little bit of opportunities to build that confidence. And once he tagged him with the overhand right and then the left that stumbled him, it was kind of like cruise control for Volkanovski in terms of his striking offense. So I want to use the example. I know it's a very long-winded answer, but I want to use the example of Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway. What was the narrative going into there? Max Holloway's never been knocked out. If it goes in the latter rounds, Ilya might struggle. Ilya threw all those narratives out the window and went right at Max Holloway and found his chin and finished him. And that's what I wanted to see out of Diego Lopez. Throw those narratives out the window and do a guide you to the dance. And I think he let Volkanovski build confidence and, resulted in a Volkanovski win.
Yeah, no, that's a good reference. I was thinking the same thing. I thought the reason he was slow in round one was because he was thinking, well, I did slow down in that Ige fight, and I'm sure he addressed it. And I've never, been 5 rounds in a UFC title fight, so I better manage my output. But he looked like he was in great shape. And after round 2, when he noticed that he had the power to put him down, you would have thought he would have stepped on the gas pedal a little bit more. He just didn't, And guess what, guys? In those 2 rounds, rounds 2 and 4, when he did get a knockdown, 2 of the judges, of the 3 judges, 2 of them gave him that round, but even 1 didn't, meaning the volume that Volkanovski was putting out was still more than the damage that Lopez was putting out. So he's going to learn a lot from this, but I think he's going to be real disappointed in his approach. This is a UFC title he went, the opportunity that he I think he misplayed it. Played it badly. And I took Diego Lopez too, and I just kept thinking, what's going on here? We haven't even talked about the game plan, Danny. He didn't really have much of a plan B. He just kept circling, and Volk kept circling in the same direction out of the power hand, but it just was like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I mean, it was so frustrating for me.
Yeah, it was frustrating for me too. And I think that's Diego Lopez's issue right now, and his issue moving forward. I think with the skills that he has, with the chin, with the durability, with the jiu-jitsu threat, the knockout power, with the intensity, I think he can easily remain in the top 10 for quite a while, and even the top 5. But if he wants to unlock that extra gear, if he wants to become champion, if he wants to be a little bit more than what he currently is, he's going to have to put some emphasis in strategy and in planning, because yeah, like you said, there was no plan B, and that was quite frustrating. His plan B was just doing everything that he was already doing, but faster, stronger, with more intensity. And we saw that as the fight proceeded, and it did work a little bit. Like the fight towards the end did get a lot closer than the beginning, so it did work. But Diego Lopez has so many tools with his jiu-jitsu, with his grappling, that I feel like he misused that. I feel like he could have tried, he could have gone that to kind of change the fight up a bit. And man, he's got great control. So I think on that end, it was a big miss for Diego Lopez, but still a championship fight, his first ever. Keep in mind, he's only been in the promotion for about 2 years. Main event, a lot of pressure on him. All in all, I do think his stock rose after this performance. I do think that people see him as a legit contender, as a dangerous threat. I mean, he almost knocked out Volkanovski a couple occasions there, and he's young, so I feel like people have high hopes for him. At least I do. So yeah, that was the only thing I would criticize from his performance, but he'll be back. He's just 30 years old. He's just getting started in the UFC. I expect him to be in another title fight at some point in the future.
And if you are just gonna have a plan A, at least do more of it. It was, I don't know. Look at Evloev. He can't even get a title shot. Bilal Muhammad, Merab Dvalishvili, they had to go 8-10 fights just to get one. These don't come easy. When they're there, pounce on them, like Fada said, like Topuria has. He goes out there and he just says, taste these. Anyway, all right, let's go back to Fada. You did take Volkanovski. Props. The rest of us got that one wrong. What do you do next with this guy? I know he's got some options out there. One seems to be really, really bright, and that's the undefeated Movsar Evloev. However, he's not really a fan favorite. I'm not even sure he's a UFC favorite, but what would you say is the correct next booking for the champ?
Yeah, Movsar. You have to go with Movsar, because I know Yair kind of made a pitch for it. I don't fault him for doing that, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? But I love Yair. I thought he looked good against Pitbull, and I know we're going to talk about that later. But I think Movsar is the correct answer here when you're looking at the landscape of 145, especially that Volkanovski mentioned him prior. Movsar put out that tweet saying, "I hope you hold up to your promise." Volkanovski was talking about, if I get past Lopez, I want to make a quick turnaround. I want to be active, and I'll fight Movsar. Joe Lopez just did an interview with Submission Radio, and he said, look, Movsar might not be like the most entertaining fighter. He might not be the UFC's favorite, but he deserves it. So at least they're acknowledging it in that regard. I think Volk in the post-fight news conference said Yair or Movsar, but I think Movsar is the way to go. He's the undefeated. I mean, like if we're talking about featherweight GOAT and whatnot, Volk already beat Yair not too long ago, and it was very impressive and it was very definitive. Yair did rebound from his loss to Brian Ortega, but still, like his last couple of fights, I think Movsar is the way to go. And why not like add an unbeaten contender to your resume and just, stretch those title defenses, have a fresh face, have a fresh challenge. So I think Movsar is the right choice.
It's true. It was refreshing to see Merab say, give me undefeated Umar Nurmagomedov. Now he doesn't have to deal with him anymore, and he's back to having fun. He's going to rematch Sean O'Malley. But let's get back to this. Do you concur, Danny, with Fada? Is it Mozart for sure? Is it a lock? Could Max come back? Topuria still hasn't signed anything. Are there other options?
Copy and paste what Farah said just now. Yeah, 100% it's got to be Movsar Evloev. It's got to be him. He's undefeated, 8 wins in the UFC. It's got to be him. I feel like we're kind of seeing a similar situation of what's happening here to what happened last year with Magomed Ankalaev. But at this point, he's undeniable. It's got to be him, especially because Topuria is at 155. Pitbull didn't win. It's got to be him. Things have kind of panned out to the way that he's got to get the next title shot. Anything outside of that would be a bit of a slap in the face to the sport, right? Because he's done his work and he is the most deserving guy on that roster. The only thing is that he is not the most exciting fight on that roster, on the featherweight roster. So could I see maybe Jair sneaking in there, especially if they need a title fight for UFC Guadalajara in September? Yeah, maybe. But I'd like to think that finally we're going to get to that point where, the UFC is going to give Movsar his due and he's going to get his shot.
All right, good stuff. Folks, listen, this show is an hour long. We still got a long ways to go, and we're unpacking UFC 314 here. I also want to bring in our special co-host panelist for the day, Coach Eric Nicksick from Xtreme Couture. How are you, Coach?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, thank you. Hey, listen, we're reacting to the historical reclaiming of the belt by the great Alexander Volkanovski. What were your thoughts, man, seeing this guy, this legend, perform out there, in his mid-30s? A lot of times those guys don't have a chance in those types of comebacks.
Kind of felt like it was going to go that way. I think it was a matter of chaos and order, and I thought order was going to take over. I was glad to see Volkanovski get back to the guy that we all know he is, show his durability, show his chin. I think that was the one question mark, right? Was his age and his durability. And I think he did that against a very tough game, Diego Lopez. So happy to see him back in the saddle and getting that title. Where he goes from here. I heard you guys' conversations about Movsar. I think that's the right call. But I definitely think there's some wild card picks too in that. I don't think this would happen, but I think like with the signing of a guy like Aaron Pico, because he wasn't a title holder like Kai from Risen, he was a title holder from Risen, was able to come over right away and fight for the title versus Pantoja. But a wild card, a guy like Aaron Pico, is somebody I think you have to keep an eye on. Maybe if he got one win, but he could be catapulted in that position right away.
Look at you throwing a wild card at us. All right. I was introducing maybe Max coming back or Topuria coming back. You're hitting us with Aaron Pico. I like it. Thanks for popping in with your iPhone 10, by the way. You're a little grainy there, but we're hearing you, and we really appreciate you being here. One of the best coaches of all time.
I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi or what, but I'm on the iPad at the gym. So,
all right, I'm just busting balls, Coach. All right, so listen, Volkanovski, is he the GOAT at 145? Coach, chime in on that one.
Yeah, I feel like he is. Volkanovski, Aldo, Max. I think you have to put Topuria in there because he beat all those guys, except for Aldo. So, but for me, it's Volkanovski. He's my GOAT at 145.
Coach, what would you do with Diego Lopez next? Time off, get him back in there. He's got something going on with Yair Rodriguez there, a little bit of beef, even though Yair's trying to sidestep him now. But you think, is that the right fight to make?
There's definitely some steam there. I think Yair or even a Gene Silva matchup makes sense. Is intriguing on what his performance was. So his stock is high, Gene Silva. So you can utilize that stock and put him against somebody with a big name and be able to catapult him right into a title shot pretty quickly, So I think you have a couple options, especially with Diego. Man, I'm trying to think too. Where was he ranked? 4 or 5?
Ranked number 3 entering this fight.
Ranked 3. Yeah. I mean, I think you got some interesting matchups because he hasn't really fought a lot of the guys at 145. He was able to kind of steamroll his way right into a title shot. So I think there's some still intriguing matchups that you can make in that division for him.
Danny, you know the landscape of Mexico pretty well. You've been out there. Maybe you even know some of this history between what's going on with Lopez and Rodriguez. I'm hearing it maybe even came from like, smaller shows, the smaller show circuit or whatever. Chime in on this. And do you think it's the right fight to make?
I think it's the right fight to make. I think Jair needs one more win to fight for the belt, and fighting the guy that just fought for the belt, I think, is always a good fight, a good choice. And also, they got beef, as you mentioned. They got problems. These two, they don't necessarily have personal beef with each other, but Diego Lopez fought Jair's friends, Marco Beltran, in Lux, which is a Fight Pass promotion in Mexico. And this was back in like 2019. And apparently, there was a lot of the buildup was kind of ugly. Jair Rodriguez alleges that Diego and his team jumped Marco Beltran in a local show. And there seems to be a lot more there. I already asked Diego, like, what's up? And he told me to ask Jair. I asked Jair, what's up? And, he told me to go ask Marco. So it looks like that's the next step, to go follow the story there. But I mean, it's a big fight for Mexico. These two are huge Mexican stars. I think this for a co-main event in UFC Guadalajara would be perfect. And you put Brandon Moreno in there in a title fight against Pantoja. I think that'd be great. But yeah, I feel like this fight does have to happen at some point. Whether it's next, I guess we'll see.
You think in the Latin culture, it's a big deal what Rodriguez is saying, that Lopez is kind of claiming Mexico and he's actually from Brazil. Like, is he tripping?
So that has been an interesting conversation. So obviously Diego Lopez is not Mexican. He is from Brazil, but he's lived in Mexico for some time, speaks Spanish very well, reps the Mexican fight shorts for the UFC, and really has been a Mexican representative, even though he's Brazil born and raised. And a lot of people, I would say, in Mexico have really embraced him, and they absolutely love Diego Lopez. So when Jair came out and say that, I saw a lot of people go against Jair and actually defend Diego Lopez. But there is also a small portion, like very nationalistic Mexicans, like being like, no, yeah, like shouts out to Diego, he's great, but yeah, he is not Mexican. He is not if he wins the title, he is not a Mexican champion. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of reactions, but I would say the majority of the MMA community in Mexico is backing up Diego Lopez, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think Y-Rod needs to let this one go, man. I don't remember. I mean, I'm part Peruvian. I wasn't tripping when Valentina was doing her dance holding the Peruvian flag. She lived there for 10 years. She spoke the Spanish. She loves Peruvian food, knows how to make it, everything. So, and we're going to see a lot of that in MMA. But if it builds heat, I'm in. How about you, Fada? What do you think of this? Is this a slam dunk? We got to see it at UFC 320. I think it is 320.
Yep.
On September 16th in Guadalajara.
Yeah, I do. I think it's absolutely the fight to make. Capitalize on this heat and rivalry that they have, and the location makes perfect sense as well. My only issue is when I'm looking at the landscape of 145, I like that Pico called out Brian Ortega. I think that's a very good UFC debut for him. I like that matchup. But then where does that leave John Silva? Because like Eric Nicksick said, you want to give him a big name with his performance and everything he's done. And then when you look at the landscape of 145, it's only Arnold Allen, maybe a Lerone Murphy, which are good stylistic matchups. They would push him up in the rankings, assuming that he will take Bryce Mitchell's place and be somewhere around the 13-12 mark of the featherweight rankings. But you want to give John Silva a big name as well. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky for me in terms of the matchmaking. But I think, Yair and Diego Lopez is a slam dunk, and you want to capitalize on kind of the drama, the trash talk and everything they did at the press conference, because they kind of stole the show over there. So, I would do that fight.
Coach Eric, let me ask you about Pitbull. So you've coached fighters everywhere. You know the talent level is pretty good at Bellator, at PFL. Oftentimes it's looked at from UFC fans like they're way, way down there. And it wasn't Pitbull's best performance, but what do you think, man? What would you like to see him do in his next fight? And do you think that was a true showing of what Patricio Pitbull's all about?
No, I think definitely you have to give credit to Yair and the style matchup. I think it was a tough style matchup to begin with for Pitbull. I think Danny and I were actually talking about that on Saturday. It's just when you match him up against Yair, it's a very difficult style to deal with, especially if you don't have the type of training partners or see those types of looks. It's very hard to deal with. My kind of wish list is Danny Ige and Pitbull. I think that's the fight to make.
Yep.
I think it's a barn burner. They damn near look alike. You're gonna have to put them in different color shorts. And for me, that's just a fun fight. And I'd be excited to be able to game plan against a legend. How to fight with Jeremy Kennedy versus him, and didn't go our way, but it was a very close matchup. So like another crack at that opportunity with Dan.
I was just about to ask you, your featherweight was in there. He got his hand raised, and we've thrown out the Pico name, the Rodriguez name, the Pitbull name. What do you like for him? But you beat me to the punch. All right, so you think that's a great option for Ige then? Yeah, and did Ige come out of that pretty unscathed? Look like it, right? He's ready to go soon.
Yeah, no, he came out of there great. So the only thing for him was his foot from kicking, not getting kicked. It was his right foot from some of the kicks that he was throwing. So no, he came out pretty much good to go, and yeah, we could be ready by June, July.
He could be ready in 4 hours, Coach.
He would definitely.
Shit, you probably call him up and tell him to step in SBC and do a SBC panelist right now.
Exactly.
He would do it. We made sure to make 145 for this fight too, because he was like, hey, you never know if somebody falls out, I'll be on championship weight just in case this has to happen. So he's always thinking ahead, man.
Coach, what did you think of Jean Silva? I thought he was the star of the show. I know a lot of people are saying Paddy, and he's like my 1A, but Jean Silva's ticking so many boxes, and that's even without speaking English. This dude made it look easy, and credit to Bryce Mitchell. Controversy or not, that dude actually fought pretty well, but Jean Silva took his time a little bit and then went out there, styled on him on the feet, and then eventually got that ninja choke.
I was blown away. Danny and I were having a conversation about it in the back before, and I thought Bryce Mitchell would actually have his way with him on the ground as far as like nullifying his jiu-jitsu, and I was wrong. So he proved a lot of areas correct, and you're absolutely right. I think he's the complete package, and this guy's going to skyrocket. He's entertaining. He puts on good fights. His striking is very tough to deal with. He does a lot off of his back foot and gets guys kind of baiting him in off that check hook. Just all around menace when it comes to the fight game. So hats off to him, man. He did his job and he performed well. So credit to him.
Folks, if you can hit that like button, we'd really appreciate it. It triggers the algorithm, helps us grow the show. It even helps this episode right now as YouTube decides what's front page or not. Look, we brought the coach, Eric Nicksick, one of the brightest minds in the history of mixed martial arts. He's co-hosting with us today. So thank you, Coach, for stopping in and being part of this. You actually bounced goes for this week's episode. He wasn't too happy. I think he says he's going to leg kick you later on when he sees you. All right. So, guys, let's go back to the co-main event. We're not dumb. We usually go in order, except we wanted to focus on the featherweights. Let's talk about Paddy Pimblett, Fada. He looked great on Saturday. And what you got to say about him now? Not you personally, but wow, he's had a lot of doubters.
Yeah, no, I think he did exactly what he needed to do in terms of, because he talks a big game. Obviously, he's very confident. He talks about wanting to fight for the title. He says the goalposts are always moved when I win and stuff like that. But that's what he needed to do, because, Michael Chandler is dangerous at the end of the day. I know a lot of people criticize his fight IQ, but at the end of the day, he's got power in his right hand. He's got power in his left hand. He can wrestle. Granted, he doesn't always use it. He did in this fight. But Chandler is dangerous, and he's shown us in all those fights. The fight of the year against Justin Gaethje with Dustin Poirier, he had his moments in all of those fights. Maybe not as much in the Charles Oliveira fight, but he did come on late and hurt Charles and managed to entertain the crowd. Here, I think Paddy looked pretty dominant throughout, and I think this loss for Chandler sets him back quite a bit. And I know we can talk about Chandler later, but in terms of Paddy, I felt like he over-delivered, if anything. I know some people are going to say like Chandler's aging and on the decline and that stuff. kind of what Paddy was attesting to about the goalpost being moved. But at the end of the day, you can't deny that he looked very, very impressive and overachieved. Like, you'd be a hater if you didn't say that Paddy overachieved. Maybe not in Paddy's eyes, but I don't think a lot of people felt like that he could look dominant throughout and get the finish. So I was very impressed.
Fada, is he ready for the Makashevs, the Oliveras, the Sarukians? That next step seems to be, you know, they're obviously the top of the heap. Is he ready for those names now? Did he just prove that by beating Michael Chandler the way he did?
Well, there's only one way to find out, really, is to match him up against one of these guys. And he's called out those guys. He called out Gaethje and he called out Poirier, although Poirier has a retirement fight, and I doubt it's going to be Paddy. Most people saying it's going to be Max. But, you know, if you put him up against a Gaethje or an Oliveira, then that's the only way you're going to find out, right? You got to put him against one of those guys, considering who Chandler's been fighting lately. So, is he ready? I think he has the skill set to make any fight competitive. I think he's very confident in his striking, in his jiu-jitsu is great. He's very slick on the ground. His overall grappling is improving in terms of his wrestling. So, yeah, I think him and like Charles Oliveira or Justin Gaethje would be extremely chaotic. So I'd love to watch either fight. So, yeah, I do think he deserves one of those big names for sure.
So, Danny, what I'm not sure is if he's ready for them. He keeps proving me wrong, for damn sure. But I feel like maybe Moicano, Hooker, or Beneil might be a good fight. Just a little bit more seasoning. What do you think?
No. Look, and if you're gonna say, "Oh, the doubters of Paddy," just use my name. Just call me out next time. Don't be so sneaky in there with the shots. Look, I'll admit I was the biggest Paddy hater and biggest Paddy doubter in probably in MMA media. I don't know. I mean, every single fight I was always like, well, against Jared Gordon, I thought he lost. Against Bobby Green, well, Bobby Green shot for a takedown. This, that. For every single fight he had, there was always an asterisk. And I feel like I was being fair. But look, I got to admit when I'm wrong. I go on here and brag when I'm right. So I got to admit when I'm wrong as well. I was completely wrong about Paddy Pimblett. I always kind of, the meme with Big Bird sitting in like the executive meeting. That's kind of the way I felt about Paddy Pimblett being in the rankings. Like, you take a guy like Bahamondes at number 15. I'm like, Paddy has, Bahamondes would run through him. Yet here he is, picking up a top win over a former Bellator champion. The dude's legit. I mean, he is good. Will he win a UFC title? Will he be champion? That I don't know. But is he among the best 15 fighters, best 10 lightweights in the world? Yeah, 100%. And he keeps proving people wrong. And I do think it's time to get him a big fight. I think those names that he called out, those are the appropriate names that he should be fighting, whether it's a Sarukian, whether it is a Gaethje or a Oliveira. I think those three names at some point he's got to fight them before he gets to the belt. And I do think he's one fight away, one good win away from fighting for that title. So yeah, we'll see. And I gotta admit when I'm wrong, I was completely wrong about Paddy Pimblett.
Coach, what are your thoughts? Is it unanimous or are you kind of with me, man? I think he still needs one more seasoning before he gets to those beasts.
Well, I think it's important to also bring up that we listen to a lot of those criticisms as coaches and staff, and those criticisms are welcome. They're not, I don't take it as hurtful. I take it as a thing that I look at when people like yourselves watch so much fighting and so much MMA. I listen because I believe in what you guys are saying. And it's not like, oh, this is something that we go back to the drawing board and try to work on those things. So the credit these guys have to understand is to Paddy and his team, because Danny, you were right. There were deficiencies in his game, but he went back and shored those things up camp after camp, and he's only looked better each time out. So let's not lose stock in the fact that this guy is constantly improving, and he has to be credited for that. And to me, I think it's just one of the best, like, kind of, because I was with you. I thought, man, I don't know how this guy's going to perform against this upper echelon of talent. And every time out, he's proven us wrong. So for me, I'm with you guys. I'm ready for that jump in the test. I think the Justin Gaethjes, the Oliveiras, the Arman Sarukians, there's going to be somebody, an odd man out in that pecking order when it comes to Islam. Is he fighting Topuria? Then that's the odd person out. And I think it's Paddy and whoever Paddy has to fight. But I'm ready to see that jump in competition and see how he takes it.
All right. We'll sum it up like this. Dana White said, is he the real deal? Fada Hanoun, Danny Segura, Eric Nicksick say he's the real deal. I just say he's real. I don't know if he's the real deal yet. I need one more than these guys need, but we'll see. Congrats. He really did look great out there. His quads are big. He looked like he filled in. you know, and the ground and pound was vicious. His hands were still a little sloppy. His kicking game was nice. So the seasoning, just you want to be at your best when you fight for the title. You know, just as Diego Lopez, it's not just physical, it's mental, it's a lot of things, but you got to be at your best when it's time to shine. What's next for Eric? Sorry, what's next for Michael Chandler? What would you do with a guy like Iron Michael Chandler, Eric? Some time off, obviously, but he is getting older. He's fighting the age game, right? And are the veterans? You're around the gym all the time. Are the veterans anxious to fight down the younger guys? You know, like as they start to wind down their careers.
I mean, he's a kind of a, I don't want to say this as a derogatory word, but like he's kind of a gimmicky fighter. I think just like novelty fights for him, fun fights, whatever. Like make him fight Colby Covington, you know, or I'm just throwing out names, just two guys that are going to talk trash and build a fight, and it doesn't really have any implications to it for me, right? Like he's not gonna be a title fight guy. He's not going to be a guy that gets to the championship. If him and Conor want to fight, so be it. No one really – it's like that's the fight he wanted this whole time, and it's a novelty fight, and Conor entertained it. Go for it. No one really cares, to be honest with you. So, you know, I like the guy. I wish him nothing but the best, but I just feel like the performance in the cage just hasn't equaled up to his talent.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Fada? What would you do next with Michael Chandler?
Yeah, I agree with Eric. It's exactly the direction you want to go because, yeah, it's not just a matter of the losses on his record. It's the performances, as Eric just alluded to. Charles Oliveira fight, I was surprised. Even Michael Chandler took that really hard. Like the other losses, because he knew that he performed in them. They were back and forth, but he was very disappointed with the Charles Oliveira fight. And I'm sure he's even more disappointed. I don't know if he's put out a statement since we started the show, but he hasn't since the fight. But I'm pretty sure this is like a moment of reflection. There are a lot of guys who are calling for him to retire. I don't think he needs to retire necessarily, but it's a matter of kind of exactly what Eric said, just putting him in fun fights that have no implications. You look at the top 15, there's no one really you could do that with in the top 15 because even like a guy like Rafael Fiziev, still a young guy, I'm sure he's a guy who still wants to fight for the title. I know he's linked to the Azerbaijan card, but in general, those lower ranked guys at lightweight, I don't even think those are the fights to make. So you just got to find him somebody that, you know, just a fun fight, like a Colby Covington, whoever's out there.
Danny, give me George, what's next. Sure.
And here's what the UFC is notorious for. They're notorious for taking a guy in the position like Chandler, who is probably on his way out, but has a big name, has a big following, is a pretty big draw, and using him to build somebody off of. So what about Rufy? Somebody like Rufy to come in and fight a guy like Chandler, and they can piggyback that and use all of his likes, all of his views, and go ahead and build another superstar at 155.
I like that matchup too.
I didn't even think of that. That is a great option, and I agree with you, Eric, 100%. Like he's in a stage where like he doesn't look like Tony Ferguson, where you're like, you know, telling the guy like, yo, you got to retire, right? Like he still can fight. He still can give you good fights. But yeah, he's not elite anymore. He's not in the title conversation anymore. So yeah, just put him in fun fights. I would suggest like a Rafael Dos Anjos, like a Legends fight. The Rufy fight, I think it's a great shot as well. A fight with Benoit Saint-Denis, I think it would be a lot of fun. But I don't know if Chandler will be up for that, given that there's not a ton of name value there. Look, if Jeremy Stevens wins in his return to the UFC, maybe a fight there. I don't know. I think there's some good options for him.
I want to see him retire, to tell you guys the truth. He's fought for a long time, and that body's been through a lot, you know, through wrestling, and now that run that he had at Bellator. He's got his family now, and it seems like he does well. I think I'd like to see him just move on from fighting, but you know, the bigger paydays are at the tail end of your career, so it's always tempting to keep going, right? Danny, stick with you here. What's next for Dominic Reyes, who got a nice win over Nikita Krylov?
Man, Dom, what a comeback, right? Like I'm talking about a career comeback. He was finished like what in those four fight losing streak. He was finished 3 times. Things look pretty bad for him, and all of a sudden he's now in a 3-fight winning streak in a division that needs big names. And he's a former UFC title challenger. I think this was the best result for the division. It looks like Pereira is going to get that immediate rematch against Ankalaev, so I'm not going to suggest the title fight, but why not a title eliminator? A rematch with him and Jiri Prochazka, I think, would be a good one for a title eliminator, or him versus Carlos Ulberg, who I think needs one more as well. I think he's right there, and I think he's in title contention. And what a resurgence, man! That guy truly has gone through a lot, and he's looked great in this comeback.
Coach, I've seen him at Xtreme Couture. I've seen him when he was kind of in that tailspin after the 3 losses, you know, when he came off the John Jones fight. He really has dusted himself off and done well. You're around a lot of light heavyweights. Can you chime in on Dominic Reyes' performances and his resurgence?
I couldn't be happier for this guy, man. Like, you know, you're right. He was in and out of the gym during this time, and it was a lot of just, you know, I wouldn't say depression, but the poor guy was going through a lot, you know, and it was between the ears, and so it might have been physical, and it was injuries. It was just all these things, and I just remember just kind of just telling him, man, like, you're going to be able to get through all this stuff. So, man, as happy as I was for Julian and Dan, I was equally as happy for Dom. Like the guy is such a good human being, such a good person. And you got to love somebody with the comeback story that's able to, you know, navigate through some adversity and, you know, beat some of that self-doubt and be in the position that he's at today. So I couldn't be happier for him. I'm with Danny. I absolutely love the Alberg call out. Rakic makes a lot of sense. There's some guys within the division that make some sense that aren't currently booked right now. But with the way that he won that fight, I would tell him to be ready. I would tell him to be ready. That there might be a short notice call. You want to stay on point. You never know what happens with Jamal Hill and Roundtree. There's always some issues there with those guys because that's now a main event phone call, right? It's something if there's a fallout. So that's what I would advise him. But I love the Alberg and I love Rakic. I think Yuri's another fight that you can make on their rematch. But I think Alberg is the one for me.
All right, as we finish wrapping up 314, we can't leave out Verna Jandiroba. Father, how do we get her a title fight? That's 5 in a row. And she really looked good against the former title challenger in Yan Jonan. She's got to be next for Zhang Weili, right? We can't have Zhang Weili going up to flyweight. I know she's got those aspirations and all, but Valentina's got her hands full still. She's got Manon Fiorot. Did I say that right? Aaron Blanchfield's coming around the corner. So what are we doing here? That's got to be the slam dunk of 2025.
Yeah, no, I agree. You have to give her the title shot. And I've spoken about this in other episodes and stuff. I just want to see a champion stay in their division and take on all comers. Granted, she would deserve a fight against Valentina Shevchenko if Valentina gets past Manon Fiorot. But if Manon Fiorot ends up winning that fight, will Zhang Weili still have that motivation? Because I'm sure she looks at Valentina as a massive name and it's like 2-1 with the double champ thing. But I feel like Zhang Weili has the skill set to just reign over strawweight. And I was having this discussion not too long ago about kind of like the strawweight GOAT. And that's all over the place because the MMA math makes absolutely no sense in that division with Rose Namajunas, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and Zhang Weili, even throwing in Carla Esparza. So why not cement yourself as the strawweight GOAT by just racking up those title defenses, try to surpass Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So Verna Jandiroba is a fresh challenge. She's on a nice win streak. She's looked great. Fight her, notch a couple more title defenses, and just kind of separate yourself because that division's a mess when it comes to like the GOAT, just because of the MMA math I mentioned. That makes absolutely no sense. So that's what I want to see. That's a clear-cut contender. Fight her, notch a couple more title defenses, even if there are rematches in there, because that's what the fighters used to do back in the day, right? Like that's part of it, to stay motivated to fight those guys. Like it's not, you know, people talk about John Jones's reign and how like towards the end he wasn't that motivated and he had those close fights and stuff. That's the hard part about it. Demetrius Johnson, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva. That's what I want to see from today's UFC champions. But I know the super fights can be very like intriguing. I know.
Well put. The top-notch talent we have at Junkie, man. It always impresses me. How is it again, Manon Fiorot?
Manon Fiorot. Fiorot. I got to roll the.
Okay. And what about Cyril Gane? One more time on that one.
Cyril Gane.
Danny, Yoel Romero?
Joel Romero.
And Jasmine Jadaway. What was that other one?
Jasmine Jauregui.
Oof, man.
I got you.
Eric, I look like an orangutan right now, right? All I need is a beer and popcorn compared to the talent that we have over here. Holy cow. Good stuff. Now, Aaron Pico, we got to get to him. So, you know, as if we didn't talk about enough featherweights, he did sign with the UFC. He's already anxious to get in there. The guys are saying, look, maybe even one fight and fight for a title. Everyone's speaking highly of Aaron Pico. And do you have a backup? You know, like you said, is that the guy? Is Ige and Pico something that interests you aside from Pitbull, or have you even thought of that one?
Yeah, it was actually a fight that they were trying to make.
Ige
behind
and
the
Pico?
scenes. Yeah. They were trying to get, because I think there was a matching clause or something. I don't know about the contracts and all that stuff. So they were trying to rush to get Pico a fight in March. And who else do you call if you need a fight on short notice? You call Dan Ige. So there was more of a I think a thing between Sean Shelby and Hunter. I think Sean already had Dan booked with Sean Woodson, so there were some discrepancies there. But Pico's a family friend of ours, man. Like, he's a guy that I've known for a long time. Brandon Gibson and I are very close. Of course, this is business. If we have to fight, we have to fight. We're competitors at the end of the day. But it's a dangerous fight. We all know Aaron Pico and how tough he is and how good he is all around, from the feet to the floor. So it was a fight that we were game for, we were interested in, but it's definitely a fight you don't want to take on short notice. That's for sure.
Were you surprised the PFL let him go?
I don't think they had a choice. I really don't. Like, what are you going to do with these guys, man? Like, I got Patchy Mix chomping at the bit every day in this gym. And I'm watching him just, destroy people. I'm not going to name names. But, and he deserves an opportunity to be able to compete. And what are we doing with these guys, man? I train with Johnny Eblin all the time. He's not going to, he's told he's not fighting until the summertime. So your top tier talent, these guys that are in the prime of their careers, are sitting on the sidelines. So I'm frustrated for them. And I don't even coach these guys, but they're my teammates and I love them and I love seeing their performances. So, we have to be vocal about it to some capacity, whether they're in the camps or in the corners or their coaches or whatever it may be, because we're losing out on premier talent by them not being able to perform in the cage.
Even Corey Anderson stops by a lot. You can throw his name in the mix. A
There
guy
you
that
go.
wears
Corey's
the
another
belt
one.
and hasn't been booked.
What's the difference?
100%.
And Eric, I don't know if you can speak on this, but what's the difference between a Patricio Pitbull or an Aaron Pico asking for their release from PFL and getting them, than like Patchy Mix saying the same thing, and just doesn't seem like he's going to get granted that? I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but
from my understanding, Danny, I think it's because of the fact that they have the championship clause. I think that that they have the belt, and it's going to be tough for them to be able to relinquish that or get rid of them in that moment. So you're looking at Pitbull. Pitbull didn't have the belt, did he? No. Yeah. So it was, and then same with Eblin. Eblin's the champ right now. So I know that he has however many fights left on his PFL deal. But again, you have these guys sitting there in their prime, and I see Johnny Eblin in here with the the guys at 85 that we have. We have a room full of talented 185ers, and I watch Johnny Eblin hold his own against every single one of these guys. So he can get in the UFC right now and compete. Same with Patchy Mix. So, these guys are in a tough situation, sitting on the sidelines and not given the opportunity to be able to make money. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Correction, I apologize. I do think he had the featherweight belt. I do think he did.
Yeah.
I thought so. Yeah, I thought so. So I really don't know. I don't know how these contracts are shaking out or what's going on. But I've had numerous talks with Patchy at length. Patchy's represented by Ali. So is Aaron Pico. So I don't know if it's apples and oranges or what the difference is with these guys, but it's just unfortunate, man, because we're losing out on some great talent. Because to me, Merab and Patchy are the cream of the crop when it comes to the bantamweight division. And Merab and Patchy trained with each other all the time, and these guys can compete.
Yeah,
Apples and oranges. You talking about Mix and Pico, or you talking about Danny Sweatshirt?
That too, Danny Sweatshirt.
All right, just making sure. Bada, give me a name for Pico's first fight, and can he be a world champ?
I love Aaron Pico. I think he's very talented, and he's young, and he's got, I still don't even think he's reached his full potential. Obviously, you have to put that opposition against him to find out. And I know some people in the comment section were saying, isn't Brian Ortega going to lightweight? I don't know what Brian Ortega is doing, but if Brian Ortega sticks around at featherweight, I think that's the fight to make, because obviously Ortega's last performance against Lopez, he didn't look great. And this will be a similar situation to Yair and Pitbull, that matchup. Yair didn't look great against Brian Ortega, and then he welcomed Pitbull into UFC. And now look, people are putting his name in a title fight, right? So if you're Brian Ortega and you fight a hot prospect like Aaron Pico, there is something to gain for Brian Ortega there. I'm not necessarily saying you put him in the title picture, but there is something to gain for both guys. And if you're Aaron Pico, you get to make noise right off the bat, and you get to be in the upper echelon of featherweight, because that's why he's here, right? He wants to prove that he could dance with the top featherweights in the UFC. So I think if Brian Ortega sticks around at 145 pounds, I agree with Pico, and that's the fight to make.
Good stuff, guys. We got to move on here. Let's talk about Amanda Nunes, the GOAT of women's MMA. Sounds like she wants to return to the sport. Thank you, Danny Segura, for lobbing that question to Dana White. You've been on a roll with some of these questions. You already put Dana White against the coals as far as McGregor fighting in 2025, or one of those. I forget what it was, but he guaranteed it. Listen, she's 1-1 against the current champ. And that title challenger, that standout Kayla Harrison coming over from PFL, she's a former teammate. And let's just say I don't think any of them exchanged Christmas cards this past December. So there's some good heat there, right? Coach Eric Nicksick, I want you to chime in, but we got a video here because this was a big weekend for Amanda Nunes. Not only is she teasing a return, but another big announcement happened.
I come from a small city in Brazil, so I chased this dream and I never stop. You work hard to change your life, make your money, whatever obstacles, good moments, bad moments, ups and downs. I just drive forward and I never give up. I knew I'm gonna be great, in this sport, but I didn't know it's gonna be so magic like how it was.
Amanda Nunes just shocked the world as a female fighter. Come in with power, athleticism. The way she fights was something you haven't really seen in the female division.
The talent was obvious from the very first time she stepped foot in the octagon. She was a little bit wild, but you could see the athleticism and the killer instinct.
Brutal elbows. And it is all over! Once she went to American Top Team, became completely, fully dedicated, she became an unstoppable monster. Tap Amanda Nunes! Wow! It's the first female Brazilian UFC champion!
She beats Miesha Tate at UFC 200 and then fights Ronda Rousey on this year-end card.
All the focus was on Ronda, and I think Amanda rightfully felt disrespected by that.
Nunes came into that fight against Ronda with a point to prove.
Ronda is in big trouble. Boom! That's it! It's over!
She had her time, she did a lot for this sport, but right now, I'm the champion, and I'm here to stay.
It wasn't just the changing of the guard, it was the evolution of women's MMA in front of our eyes, and Amanda Nunes was just getting started.
She chased greatness, right? She didn't just settle to be champion in one division, she went to capture 2 belts.
No one thought Chris Cyborg could be beat, and Amanda Nunes finished her violently.
Oh! Amanda she Nunes! Did it! She did Chris Cyborg out cold!
100%. She's the best ever. The fact that she just knocked out Cyborg, she's #1.
That knockout sent her into a completely different stratosphere.
She's the best ever. Nobody can dispute that.
That's it.
Amanda Nunes, still queen of the jungle!
Chegou aí destronando, sendo campeã de 2 categorias. É nome grande aí que me inspira.
She's the only double champion to simultaneously hold and defend both belts.
There's the tap!
Oh my goodness.
Amanda Nunes!
Wow.
Just too good.
I mean, she's what happens when all the pieces come together. When you have someone with God-given power, who also has spectacular technique, who's trained in one of the best gyms on planet Earth, and who has the mindset.
Amanda Nunes truly has changed everything that you think about female mixed martial arts.
I'm here to make history, keep putting my name in the top of the mountain.
She has set a standard by which all future champions will be judged.
Amanda has really earned her spot as the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Nunes has beaten every former UFC Women's Bantamweight champion.
Man.
What a legacy.
She's gonna go on the Mount Rushmore of women's MMA.
我认为 Amanda Nunes 会被大家认为是 GOAT.
She is the pinnacle of the sport.
Nobody will ever touch what she's done.
Double jumping forever, baby.
The greatest of all time, Amanda Nunes.
I want to ask one of the greatest coaches of all time, what are your thoughts on Amanda Nunes? Will there ever be another one like her?
Tough to say, but she is the cream of the crop when it comes to women's MMA. And arguably, I think that you have to put her on top of the GOAT list as far as, all around MMA fighters. She's a pioneer, and I'm happy that she's coming back. I think that the UFC is so smart in the way that they play chess. I think they're looking at the fact that Kayla Harrison should beat Juliana Pena, and this is going to have some steam on it, and they're making the proper moves to get her ready for a possible fight versus Kayla Harrison for the future. In the future, so I love it. I think that MMA is better with Amanda Nunes in it, and I'm glad she's coming back.
What's your favorite Amanda Nunes moment, Coach?
You got to say Cyborg, man. You got to say Cyborg, to be honest with you. Especially the way that she beat her and the technique with the slip inside overhand, knocking her out. I'm pretty sure she was a sizable underdog in that fight, but being able to put her out and put her to sleep for another title, to me, that was the performance.
Danny, your thoughts on Amanda Nunes, the potential comeback, the Hall of Fame, and your favorite moment?
Yeah, she 100% needs to be in the Hall of Fame. I just don't like it when fighters are still kind of active. I think there needs to be like a gap between retirement and them getting introduced into the Hall of Fame. Just out of formality. But yeah, no, she 100% deserves to be there. And look, women's MMA, let's be honest, hasn't really had a great run in the last few years. There hasn't been that many big fights. But Amanda Nunes returning, and if she does end up fighting Kayla Harrison, that'd be huge. Even just the trilogy with Juliana Pena, say if Juliana Pena defends her belt, I think that'd be pretty big as well. So yeah, I think the sport is way more exciting. The sport is just brought up at a higher level when she's around. So I'm all in for this comeback. And none of us felt like she needed to retire, right? There were some fighters that kind of, they're still champions, but they retire and you knew they were kind of towards the end of it. Honestly, I think if Amanda Nunes returns, she becomes champion again.
Favorite moment?
Oof, I got to go with the Chris Cyborg one. I remember just being, because I thought Chris Cyborg was going to beat her. I just remember being in shock by the way she did it and becoming a 2-division champion. I mean, that was a key moment for her legacy.
Fought all those questions to you. React to, she the possible comeback. We know she belongs in the Hall of Fame, so we can skip that one. And your favorite moment, please.
Yeah, the Cyborg one, I agree with both of them because it's the holy crap moments. We don't get too many of those. We do in terms of the beauty of like the technique, but in terms of the expectation of the outcome, and that was one of them. So definitely the Cyborg knockout. And in terms of her coming back, because she retired with the Juliana Pena trilogy on the table. So I'm not sure how motivated she'd be if Juliana ends up beating Kayla, but Juliana beating Kayla, which nobody thinks is going to happen, is obviously going to make things bigger for Juliana. So I think Amanda should come back for either one of them. And both fights, like Danny said, would be very big. I know the motivation for Amanda is probably the Kayla Harrison fight because she has nothing left to prove, right? Like she's done everything. So for her, she doesn't feel like she needs to beat Juliana a second time. She feels like the rematch kind of proved the point. With Kayla Harrison, it's the accolades that Harrison brings with the Olympic gold medals, PFL champ, and then her coming and making waves in the UFC, being this, big, strong athlete in front of Amanda, because obviously Amanda's had the strength advantage in a lot of her fights. But I think either way, if she has the itch to come back, period, I think she should fight regardless, even if it's the Juliana Pena trilogy. I just question how motivated she'd be for that one, but I'm all for her comeback.
I don't have necessarily a favorite moment because she had so many highlights, but in the first Valentina fight, and this is something that she carried with her, she used to gas a little and she addressed it and she came back stronger than ever. And that's what champions are all about, filling in those holes, the deficiencies, and becoming a stronger fighter. And of course, that never became an issue again. I think with Juliana Pena, she just phoned it in the first one. It wasn't necessarily a gassing issue. I just think she either didn't train at all or, like I say, was mentally out of it. Coach, I know you got to leave because you got the 10 a.m. practice, but I do want to get your opinion on one thing from another angle, all right? GFL had a huge announcement this past week. They canceled the 2 shows out in L.A., and there's even questions whether they might have a promotion going forward or not. Their commissioner, Darren Owen, says we couldn't get the funding, and that's why we couldn't do it, but we're lining other things up. But nothing certain came out of them that there are going to be shows, that the funding is there, a lot of uncertainties. Talk to us about a guy who probably maybe even help prepare a few guys, maybe a few days, a few weeks into a camp, and how frustrating it probably is for them, or maybe what you've heard, this type of announcement. It's supposed to be good for MMA, for them, for fighters to have other options, but at the same time, this bullshit happens.
Man, it's heartbreaking because you're absolutely right. We do need more promotions that are going to provide more opportunities for fighters. One in particular is a guy who I think is one of the best MMA guys on my roster is Kai Kamaka. When you, firsthand watch this guy in our room, he jumps off the page. And talent level, skills, his growth, everything that he does. So he made a decision to go over to GFL with some promises, and these promises have been empty, unfortunately. And it was a calculated risk from leaving PFL to go over GFL with this, and it's really unfortunate, man, because you're banking on your livelihood with a promoter who's telling you all these things, and he's not being able to bring it to the table. And again, I think when you make this type of decision, you hope that they have the funding to be able to back it up, and it just hasn't been able to come to fruition with any of this stuff. So I feel bad for so many of these guys. I talked to Woodley last week, and this is before this announcement, and Woodley was pretty happy about what he thought he can be able to do at GFL with the 50% revenue share and all these ideas with the teams and things like that. It has great premise behind it, but it just doesn't really feel like it has the leadership or the funding to be able to put it together. I was hoping to see at least one. I was hoping to be able to at least see that LA card and see how it goes. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see any of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And when will we see Ngannou next? Just because we have you here and you're his right-hand man. You've been with him in the MMA run and the boxing run. And I know that even at the steakhouse run, you guys are always smashing food together. But what's next for him?
I don't know. I talked to him this morning, but we don't really talk fighting, man. We're just been, talking family stuff and he's just my boy. So we were talking some stories about the weekend and some trouble Knox got in and had a good laugh about some stuff. And that was it. So haven't really talked to him anything about MMA or fighting related, just family stuff. All right.
But who out eats who at the steakhouse?
Oh, I smoke him. Ooh. Yeah, I smoke him. Him, Ray, Cepho. You ask Francis or Ray who eats more, and it's me, 100%. I'll eat more than both of those two.
As you're walking from your office to the practice right now, do me a favor, get out that phone, text your buddy out in Boston, and let him know that we're going to meet him in the finals, and it's Luka time now, baby.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Joe called. He FaceTimed right after Dan's win, so he was all gunned up for Ige and Brad over the weekend, last 2 weeks in a row. So he's such a great guy, man. I've never been a Boston basketball fan or a Boston Celtics fan, but I'm a Joe Mazzulla fan, that's for sure.
All right. Well, tell him that came from fellow Laker fans, Fada Hanoun and Gorgeous George and Goes. Tell him we said, what's up? We'll see you in the finals. Thanks, Coach, for doing the show with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. Sorry for being tardy as well.
No worries, man. It was a pleasure having you.
I'll see you guys.
All right. Danny and Fada, let's clean up here with GFL. You kind of heard me tell the coach about the announcement that they made. Nothing's for certain. Fada, let's go to you. What are your thoughts here? Very, very disappointing to say the least in so many ways. And it's going to be hard to trust them going forward.
Yeah, and I think it's more disappointing for kind of the younger fighters, because the older fighters with established names can go many different routes. The boxing, all the other opportunities that there are out there, like we're seeing a Darren Till do. Granted, he is a young fighter, but like Eric Nicksick said, the Kai Kamakas, who, Kai was on a 5-fight win streak before that split decision loss to Brendan Loughnane. I think he's like 30 years old or something. So those guys I feel bad for, because those guys are still, they still haven't reached their goals, and they saw a big opportunity with GFL where they can make a lot of money, or they thought they could make a lot of money, and then it just gets all canceled. And it's like, now what? And you don't know what their relationship is like with the promotions they were at before. So it's like they're in a quandary kind of thing. And it's, like I'm not sure what's going to happen. More promotions is always good. More opportunities for fighters. You even got guys like Kevin Lee, who just felt like he was starting to get his life together. And, the Tony Ferguson fight made a lot of sense.
Yeah, that was a nice one. I wanted to see him in Dylan Dennis.
Him and Dylan Dennis, and then Tony and Dylan Dennis, and then, Kevin Lee wanted the Tony Ferguson fight. There were just opportunities for people who are turning their life around, and then this suddenly comes, and it's like, now what? Like, if you're Kevin Lee, now what, right? Like, where do you go from here? So it's just a tough spot for a lot of these guys. For the older fighters, it's not like they had too many options out there, right? It's not like they're gonna, 42-year-olds are gonna go back to the UFC, even a Uriah Faber and stuff like that. So those guys, I feel like it sucks, but some of us didn't even want to see them fight, right? So, but I feel kind of more bad for the younger fighters that still have a lot left in the tank. It's like now maybe they've soured previous relationships and maybe they can't go back to their original home. So where do they go from here?
Whew, man, for sure. There's so many different. Every fighter has, they're in a different boat. How about you, Danny? What other ways do you think this impacted? Like Fada pointed out, some fighters might have burned a bridge. Some fighters, we know they can't get in the PFL world tournaments, so now they just got to hang on for a promotion that can't even book their main stars.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen, man? What do you even want them to stick around?
A couple of things. One, extremely responsible from the GFL to book fights without funding, right? The funding first has to come, and once you have a budget, then you can see who you can pay out and whatnot, and then you book fights. So extremely irresponsible. And I'm not saying there was ill intent here, but man, like the whole GFL debacle really like screwed over a lot of careers, right? Some more than others, obviously. That doesn't mean some others can't bounce back as well, but the fighting careers are short, and in order to like have this wrench thrown in the careers of a lot of fighters, especially fighters that were still have a little bit of prime left in them or a few good years, yeah, it's just terrible and really sad to see. And another sad scene is that it kind of gives you a glimpse into the MMA industry, and with PFL buying Bellator, dismantling it, and then although they bought it for all their top tier talent, letting go of almost all their top tier talent, like a Pico, like a Pitbull, like a Ryan Bader, it's really just become a one horse race, and that's the UFC. Like there is number 2, I guess, with PFL, but then after that, there's nothing left. There's absolutely nothing left, and that is a troubling spot to be in, especially for fighters that are looking to maximize their earnings and have as many opportunities as possible. So yeah, just a really kind of wake-up call for the MMA industry and in terms of like what current state it finds itself in. But one positive that I'd like to highlight out of all of this, if there can even be one, is that I think at least GFL really highlighted how much free agent talent is out there, right? If you had unlimited money and you had to put up promotion, you would do exactly what GFL did, get all the big names possible. And I think for those that are trying to get into the MMA industry, say like, or already existing like a PFL or even the UFC that's brought a veteran back like Jeremy Stevens, it kind of highlighted some of the names that are still willing to tango and that draw interest. So yeah, I mean, the free agent market is pretty hot right now. There's a lot of good names out there. GFL proved it.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. You guys did a wonderful job on today's show. I just want to close with saying the GFL part, I saw Frank Mir and Fabricio Verdum get hurt in the last few months. And I wonder if any of that had to do with preparing for fights that never happened. But because I don't know that for a fact,
yeah,
who knows, but like I say, it's in so many ways, this thing had tentacles. Now, I applaud them for doing this 6 weeks out and not, letting them fight and then saying, oh, we ain't got the money. Because trust me, covering the sport for a long time, I've even seen that. And it's the worst. It was a show out in Puerto Rico, I think that happened with, a show out in North Carolina years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But yeah, very disappointing. And I think until they have the actual funding and everything set, I just don't want to even hear from them for now. I always wish these promotions the best that can give fighters an opportunity to make some money. But this one, it just kind of blew up. And I know it hurt some people behind the scenes. All right, Danny, great job out there in Miami, Florida. Go get some rest. Somebody's asking me about a vibrating chair.
I got a whole shift. No, I got go get some coffee.
All right. I drank a lot of coffee, so I actually am one of them people that moves their legs a lot. I'm fidgety. I'm excited. I got all this talent here. The coach, Fada Hanoun, Danny Segura, this show that just happened, and all of you, hopefully you guys can hit a like on the way out. Hopefully you can share this show so we can help it blow it up. And Fada, props to you, man. That show that you've been doing on Saturday, you guys have been killing it. Some great numbers there, the previews. I'm writing notes down because as you all know, I like to gamble on these. So check out Fada's preview shows before every pay-per-view. And thank you again for doing SVC. It's been a while. All right, folks, we are out of here. Goes, great job behind the scenes. And everyone else, go out and have a nice week. We'll see you soon. Go out and be a champion.